I never thought I'd be writing something like this. My name is Jake, and I want to share my story about how I uncovered my wife's betrayal and what followed. It all started with the typical routine of life: waking up, grabbing coffee, heading to work, and then coming home to my wife, Sarah, whom I had loved unconditionally for the last 7 years. We had a decent life, or at least I thought we did. On the surface, everything seemed perfect: a nice house, good jobs, and a couple of dogs that kept our lives lively. But in hindsight, I realize now that I missed the signs. At first, the changes were subtle. Sarah had always been a little distant, but I chalked it up to stress from work. She was a marketing manager at a big company, and I figured that managing teams and campaigns could be exhausting. Then I started noticing the little things, like how she would come home later than usual and how her phone was always glued to her hand. I brushed it off, thinking she was just busy or perhaps connecting with colleagues after hours. But then I caught her in a lie. One Friday evening, I had planned a nice dinner to surprise her. I took the day off work to cook her favorite meal, but when I called to check in, she said she was working late. I could hear the hesitation in her voice. It was almost as if she forgot I'd called. I tried to be understanding, but something didn't sit right. That night, I decided to investigate. I wasn't one to snoop, but my gut instinct was screaming at me. While she was still at work, I casually picked up her phone from the kitchen counter. She had left it unlocked. I scrolled through her messages, hoping to find something innocent. That's when I stumbled across a thread between her and my brother's best friend, Tom. They were planning to meet up, and the way they spoke to each other made my stomach churn. The messages were flirty, filled with inside jokes and emojis that crossed the line. My heart raced as I read on and realized this was more than just friendly banter. There were references to intimate encounters, and I felt the world around me collapse. I was in shock. This couldn't be happening. I never saw Tom as a threat. He was like family to me. I felt sick, betrayed, and furious all at once. When Sarah finally got home, I confronted her. I had rehearsed what I wanted to say, but the words tumbled out in a chaotic rush. I felt like a volcano ready to erupt. "How could you do this to me, to us?" I demanded, my voice trembling with disbelief. Her reaction was not what I expected. Instead of remorse, she laughed it off, insisting that it was all a joke and that I was overreacting. She just stood there with that infuriating smirk on her face, trying to downplay the entire situation. "Come on, Jake. You know how Tom is. We were just messing around. It doesn't mean anything," she said dismissively. The casual dismissal of her actions stung more than anything. I was furious, heartbroken, and confused all at once. How could she so easily wave away something that felt like a knife to my gut? I demanded the truth, and she scrambled for excuses. But every excuse felt more hollow than the last. That night I didn't sleep. I couldn't. My mind was racing with images of her and Tom together, and I felt a sense of betrayal that I couldn't shake off. The emotional turmoil was overwhelming. I was angry, devastated, and scared all at once. How had I missed the signs? How could she do this to me? As I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I realized I had a decision to make. I had loved Sarah, but could I ever trust her again? More importantly, did I even want to? The thought of her with Tom sent waves of rage through me. I needed to confront this head-on and figure out what I was going to do next. I was determined that I wouldn't just sit back and let this happen to me. I needed to take control, not just for myself but also for my future. The days following my discovery were a blur of emotions: anger, betrayal, sadness, and a strange sense of clarity that slowly began to settle in. I had spent years building a life with Sarah, and now it felt like everything was crumbling around me. The first few mornings after that fateful confrontation were the hardest. I would wake up and for a brief moment, everything felt normal. Then the memories would flood back: the laughter, the intimacy, the trust I thought we had shared. It was like a punch in the gut each time. I avoided Sarah as much as possible after the confrontation. She tried to act like everything was fine, which only fueled my resentment. I could feel her frustration mounting as I retreated into my own world. I stopped initiating conversations, and I found excuses to stay late at work or spend time with friends. The thought of being in the same space as her made my skin crawl. She had crossed a line that I never thought she would. During one of those late nights at work, I confided in my best friend, Mike. He had always been my sounding board, and I needed someone to help me process what I was feeling. Over beers, I recounted the entire story, from the initial signs of trouble to the discovery of the messages and the hollow confrontation. Mike listened intently, occasionally shaking his head in disbelief. "Dude, that's messed up. You deserve better than this," he said, his voice steady and firm. "You need to show her that you're not going to be a doormat. This isn't just about getting over a betrayal, it's about reclaiming your life." His words struck a chord. I realized I couldn't just dwell in the pain and anger. I needed to take action to remove the toxic people from my life, starting with Sarah and Tom. I didn't want to make rash decisions in the heat of the moment, but I knew I had to plan carefully. I wanted to ensure that I could move forward without looking back. That weekend, I devised a plan. First, I would confront Tom. I wanted him to know that I was aware of his betrayal and that there would be consequences. I also needed to ensure that Sarah understood that I wasn't going to take this sitting down. I was done with the lies and the dismissive behavior. I wanted her to see that I was capable of standing up for myself. When I finally confronted Tom, it was at a bar where we had shared countless laughs and memories. I felt a mix of nerves and anger as I walked in, and my palms were sweaty. He was sitting with a couple of guys from our friend group, laughing and joking, completely oblivious to the storm brewing in my heart. When he spotted me, his smile faded a little, and I knew he could sense something was off. "Hey man, what's up?" Tom greeted me, trying to keep things casual. I leaned in, my voice low and steady. "We need to talk outside." I could see the confusion on his face, but he followed me without protest. The air was thick with tension as we stepped outside. I could feel my heart racing, but I forced myself to remain calm. "I know about you and Sarah," I said, my voice unwavering. His expression shifted from confusion to panic in an instant. "Jake, I can explain." "There's nothing to explain. You betrayed me and you did it with my wife. What were you thinking?" I felt the anger boiling inside me, but I forced myself to breathe. Tom stammered, trying to find the right words. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It was a mistake, man. I didn't think she'd ever tell you." "A mistake?" I shot back, my voice rising. "You think this is just some casual error. You knew what you were doing the moment you started texting her. You let it go too far." I watched as guilt washed over his face. For a brief moment, I felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that he was facing the consequences of his actions. I wanted him to feel as betrayed as I did. I continued, "Stay away from both of us. I'm cutting you out of my life." As I walked away, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was empowering to stand up for myself, to reclaim my life from the toxicity that had invaded it. But there was still the matter of Sarah. Confronting Tom was just the beginning. I still needed to face my wife. Returning home later that evening, I found Sarah sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. I could see the tension in her shoulders as she noticed my presence. I knew she was expecting a discussion, perhaps even an apology, but I wasn't there to apologize. "Sarah," I started, my voice steady. "We need to talk, and this time it's not going to be the same as last time." Her eyes narrowed, and I could see the defensiveness creeping in. "What do you mean?" she asked, feigning innocence. "I'm done with the lies. I confronted Tom today. He knows I'm aware of everything, and I'm done with both of you. I can't trust you, and I won't live in a marriage built on betrayal." The look on her face was a mix of shock and anger. "You don't mean that. We can work through this." "No," I replied firmly. "Trust is broken beyond repair. I need to put myself first, and that means removing toxic people from my life." In that moment, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I was finally taking control of my narrative, and it felt liberating. I had a long road ahead, but I was determined to navigate through the pain and emerge stronger on the other side. It was time to reclaim my life, and I was ready for the journey ahead. The following weeks were a whirlwind of emotions. After confronting Tom and Sarah, I made a conscious effort to distance myself from the chaos. I focused on my work and spent time with friends who supported me. Despite the pain of betrayal, I was determined to prioritize my mental well-being. I started exercising regularly, rediscovered hobbies I had set aside, and even began to enjoy my own company again. But the hardest part was navigating the aftermath of the confrontation with Sarah. She was relentless in her attempts to win me back, and I had to give her credit for her persistence. Each day, she would bring up our past, reminding me of the good times we shared, the vacations, the laughter, and the dreams we had for the future. But none of it changed the reality of what she had done. I was no longer that naive husband who would take her back without question. One evening, she attempted a different approach. She came home from work early, and when I walked into the living room, I found her sitting there with tears in her eyes. My initial instinct was to feel a pang of sympathy, but I quickly reminded myself of the betrayal that had shattered my trust. "Jake," she said, her voice trembling, "I miss you. We can fix this. Please, let's go to couples therapy. I'll do anything to make this right." Her plea hit me hard. In that moment, I saw the woman I had loved, but I also saw the manipulator who had hurt me deeply. "Sarah," I started cautiously, "you can't just expect me to forget what happened. Therapy might help, but I need time to think. You've shattered my trust, and I can't pretend that everything is okay." She nodded, her expression shifting from sadness to frustration. "So what? You're just going to throw away our entire life together, after everything we've built?" I took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. "You made a choice to be with Tom. You threw away the life we built together in an instant. I can't just pretend it didn't happen." The tension in the room was thick, and I could see the wheels turning in her mind. She was grasping for any way to pull me back into her orbit, but I was resolute. I couldn't let myself fall back into that cycle of manipulation and deceit. Days turned into weeks, and while I spent time with friends and focused on my work, the shadow of Sarah's betrayal loomed in the background. I started to think about the future, my future, and it felt liberating to imagine a life free from the toxicity that had consumed my marriage. I began to embrace the idea of starting anew. One evening, I decided to visit a local coffee shop I had been meaning to check out. As I sat there sipping my drink, I struck up a conversation with a woman named Emily, who was sitting at the table next to me. She was warm and engaging, and we quickly fell into a conversation about our lives. It felt good to connect with someone new, someone who didn't carry the baggage of my past. As we chatted, I learned that she had gone through her own struggles. She had recently ended a long-term relationship and was navigating the complexities of starting over, too. It was refreshing to exchange stories of heartbreak and growth, and for the first time in a while, I felt something shifting within me: hope. Emily and I exchanged numbers, and over the next few weeks, we began to text regularly. Our conversations flowed effortlessly, and I enjoyed the lightness she brought to my life. We eventually made plans to meet up again, and I found myself looking forward to our outings. It was a welcome escape from the heaviness that had been hanging over me. As my connection with Emily deepened, I felt a sense of guilt creeping in. I hadn't fully let go of Sarah, and I wasn't ready to jump into something new. But the more I spent time with Emily, the more I realized that I deserved happiness. I had spent too long in a toxic relationship, and it was time to reclaim my life on my own terms. One evening, as I sat outside with Emily laughing and enjoying a warm sunset, I realized that I had to have another conversation with Sarah. I needed to set boundaries and make it clear that I was moving on. I texted her, asking her to meet me at a park near our home. I felt a sense of dread as the time approached, but I knew it was necessary. When I arrived, I saw her sitting on a bench, her expression unreadable. "Jake," she said, her voice tentative, "I've been thinking about what you said. I want to make things right. We can go to therapy. We can fix this together." I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "Sarah, I appreciate that you want to work on things, but I've made up my mind. I'm moving on. I've started seeing someone who treats me with the respect I deserve. I can't be in a relationship where I'm constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering if you're being honest with me." Her face fell, and I could see the anger boiling beneath the surface. "You think you can just replace me, after everything we've been through?" "No, it's not about replacing you. It's about reclaiming my life. I need to prioritize my happiness, and I can't do that with you in my life." The confrontation was intense, but as I walked away, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. It was clear to me now, this was the right decision. I was finally taking control of my life, and I would no longer let anyone dictate my happiness. As the days passed, I grew more resolute in my decision. I was ready to let go of the past and embrace whatever the future held. I had learned a lot about myself through this experience. I was stronger than I thought, and I would no longer tolerate toxicity. In my life, I deserved love, respect, and the chance to build a happy future. It was time to move forward one step at a time. As I moved deeper into this new chapter of my life, I felt a sense of freedom that I hadn't experienced in years. I was actively choosing happiness, and it felt exhilarating. My time with Emily blossomed into something genuinely special. She was kind, understanding, and had a contagious enthusiasm for life that drew me in. We shared our stories, our fears, and our dreams, and it became clear that we were both looking for a fresh start. One evening, after a long day at work, Emily invited me to a concert in the city. It was a local band, but the atmosphere was electric, filled with laughter, music, and the thrill of the crowd. As we moved through the sea of people, I felt a lightness in my chest that I hadn't felt in ages. The music was catchy, and we found ourselves dancing together, lost in the moment. As the band played, I couldn't help but glance at Emily, her face lit with joy. I realized how far I had come since the tumultuous days with Sarah. I was no longer the man shackled by distrust and betrayal. I was free to express myself, to laugh, to love without fear. It was empowering. But despite my newfound happiness, I still had to confront the lingering shadows of my past. One day, while I was at the gym, I received a call from my brother who was unaware of the fallout between Sarah and me. "Hey man, I've been meaning to check in. How's everything going?" he asked, his tone casual. I hesitated for a moment, contemplating whether to share the truth. "Things are complicated," I replied, carefully choosing my words. "Complicated how? Are you and Sarah okay?" I took a deep breath, the weight of the situation still heavy on my heart. "Not really. She cheated on me with Tom." There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. "What? I can't believe that. Tom, I trusted him. Are you okay?" "I'm getting there," I said, my voice steady. "I'm focusing on myself now. I've started seeing someone else." "Wow, man, I'm sorry you had to go through that. It's good to hear you're moving on, though. You deserve to be happy." Our conversation turned to lighter topics, but I could sense the concern lingering beneath my brother's words. He cared, and so did I. I didn't want him to feel torn between me and Tom, but I also couldn't let Tom's actions dictate my future. After our call, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I had shared my truth and felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Moving on was not just about distancing myself from Sarah and Tom. It was also about finding support in those who truly cared for me. As my relationship with Emily progressed, I started to realize how important it was to set boundaries. While I enjoyed every moment we shared, I was still wary of the pain I had experienced. One evening, during a quiet dinner at a cozy restaurant, I decided to bring it up. "Emily," I began, my voice a bit shaky. "I really like where this is going, but I want to be honest with you. I've been through a lot recently. I'm still healing from my past, and I want to make sure we're on the same page." She looked up from her plate, her dark eyes focused on me. "I appreciate that, Jake. I want you to be open with me. I know relationships can be complicated, especially when you're coming out of something difficult." I nodded, relieved that she understood. "I just don't want to rush things. I want to build something real with you, but I also need to take my time." "Of course," Emily replied, her voice warm and reassuring. "I'm here for you, and I'm willing to take things at a pace that feels right for both of us. We can take our time to understand each other and grow together." That conversation felt like a turning point. It was refreshing to be with someone who was willing to communicate openly. I hadn't realized how much I craved that level of honesty until I experienced it. It was a stark contrast to the lies and deceit I had endured with Sarah. But even as I enjoyed this new relationship, the shadows of my past continued to loom. Sarah would reach out from time to time, sending messages filled with apologies and pleas for another chance. Each time I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I wanted to be compassionate, but I also knew that her actions had irrevocably changed everything between us. One evening, after a particularly difficult day at work, I received a text from her. "Jake, I know I messed up. I can't stop thinking about you. Can we please talk?" I stared at the screen, my emotions swirling. I knew I had to respond, but I had no desire to rehash the pain. Instead, I decided to set a firm boundary. I typed back, "Sarah, I don't think it's healthy for either of us to keep communicating. I need space to heal and move on. I wish you well, but I can't go back." Hitting send felt liberating, like closing a door that had been left ajar for too long. I was finally standing up for myself and choosing my happiness. As the weeks passed, I embraced my new life with Emily. We explored the city together, tried new restaurants, and shared our dreams for the future. Each moment felt like a gentle reminder that I was worthy of love and happiness. I had learned that healing takes time, and while the scars of the past would always be there, they no longer defined me. I was ready to let go of the hurt and embrace the possibility of a brighter future. And while thoughts of Sarah and Tom would occasionally creep into my mind, I had gained clarity. I had learned to recognize that I had the power to choose my path moving forward. I was no longer the victim of betrayal. I was a survivor ready to thrive. The days turned into weeks, and life felt richer and fuller than it had in a long time. My relationship with Emily continued to grow, and I found comfort in the genuine connection we shared. We laughed, explored, and supported each other as we navigated our individual journeys of healing. I had never felt so at peace, and it was a feeling I wanted to hold on to. However, there were moments when the past threatened to resurface, like a ghost haunting me in the corners of my mind. Sarah continued to send messages, each one more desperate than the last. I read some of them, my heart heavy with a mixture of anger and sympathy. "I miss you," one of them said. "Please, let's talk. I want to make things right." But I knew better now. I couldn't let myself be pulled back into that emotional chaos. One Saturday afternoon, Emily and I decided to take a day trip to a nearby hiking trail. The weather was perfect, and the promise of fresh air and beautiful views felt like a breath of fresh air for both of us. As we hiked, we shared stories about our childhoods, our dreams, and our hopes for the future. There was a lightness to our conversation, and I could feel the bond between us strengthening. After a few hours, we reached a stunning overlook. The view was breathtaking, and as I stood there, I realized how far I had come. I had been in a dark place, suffocated by betrayal and heartache, but standing there with Emily, I felt like I could finally breathe. As we took in the landscape, Emily turned to me, her eyes sparkling. "You know, I really appreciate how open you've been with me. You've been through so much, and it takes a lot of strength to share that." I smiled, feeling grateful for her understanding. "Thank you, Emily. It's refreshing to be with someone who appreciates honesty. I've learned the hard way that being open is crucial in any relationship." After that day, things seemed to flow smoothly between us, but there was still a part of me that needed to confront the feelings I had about Sarah. I had been avoiding the issue entirely, pretending that I could just move on without processing everything. I realized I needed to close that chapter properly. One evening, while Emily was out with friends, I sat down with a notebook and began to write. I poured out my feelings, the hurt, the betrayal, the anger, and ultimately the acceptance. Writing it all down felt cathartic. I needed to acknowledge my emotions fully before I could truly move on. After writing for a while, I decided it was time to face Sarah one last time. I sent her a message, letting her know I wanted to meet. Surprisingly, she responded almost immediately, expressing eagerness to talk. I suggested a coffee shop halfway between our homes, and we agreed on a time. When I arrived at the coffee shop, I felt a mix of nerves and determination. I was ready to confront my past and set everything straight. When Sarah walked in, her expression was unreadable, a mix of hope and anxiety. "Jake," she started, her voice soft, "I'm so glad you agreed to meet." "Let's get straight to the point," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. "I wanted to meet to discuss everything. I've moved on, and I want you to understand that." She looked taken aback, but I pressed on. "You broke my trust, Sarah. What you did with Tom was not just a mistake, it was a choice. I can't pretend that didn't happen, and I won't allow it to define my future." Tears welled up in her eyes, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sympathy. "I know I messed up, Jake. I've been trying to work on myself to understand why I did what I did. I'm so sorry." "Apologies are just words," I replied, my voice firm. "What matters is action. I hope you can find the help you need to figure things out, but I can't be a part of that anymore. I need to focus on my own healing and happiness." The conversation continued, and I listened as she expressed her remorse. I could see that she was genuinely trying to convey her feelings, but it felt too late. The damage had been done, and I was no longer that man who would take her back. When we finished our conversation, I felt a sense of closure. I had confronted my past, acknowledged the pain, and made it clear that I was moving forward. As we parted ways, I felt lighter, as though a burden had been lifted from my shoulders. Back home, I shared the experience with Emily. She listened intently, offering support and understanding. "I'm proud of you for doing that," she said, her voice warm. "You took a huge step in healing. It's important to have that closure." I smiled, grateful for her presence in my life. In that moment, I realized how much I had grown. I was learning to prioritize my own happiness, to love openly, and to build a future without the shadows of my past haunting me. As the days turned into weeks, I embraced my new life with Emily. We continued to explore the city, attend events, and deepen our connection. Each moment felt like a reminder of the love I had once thought I had lost. I started to believe in love again, but this time, it was different. It was built on respect, openness, and trust, everything my past marriage had lacked. I had learned that I was stronger than I had ever imagined, and I was ready to embrace whatever the future held for me. With a newfound sense of hope, I looked forward to building a life that was true to who I was, one filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. As the months passed, my relationship with Emily continued to flourish. Each day felt like a new adventure, and I cherished the moments we shared. We traveled to new places, tried different cuisines, and explored our dreams together. It was refreshing to be with someone who encouraged my growth and celebrated my journey. Emily was incredibly supportive of my healing process. She understood that I had scars from my past, but she never pushed me to rush through my feelings. Instead, she patiently walked alongside me, sharing her own experiences and letting me know that it was okay to take my time. One evening, as we sat on my couch enjoying a quiet night in, I looked over at her and couldn't help but smile. "You know, I never thought I could feel this way again after everything that happened with Sarah, but you've shown me that it's possible." Emily smiled back, her eyes warm and genuine. "I'm glad to hear that, Jake. You deserve to be happy, and I'm grateful that we found each other." It was in that moment, surrounded by laughter and the comfort of companionship, that I realized just how far I had come. I had transformed from a man broken by betrayal into someone who not only understood his worth, but also embraced the love he deserved. Yet, even as I enjoyed this new chapter, the scars of my past occasionally resurfaced. There were moments when I would find myself questioning whether I could fully trust again, whether I was truly ready to open my heart. When those thoughts crept in, I would take a step back and remind myself of my journey, the pain I had endured and the strength I had gained. One day, I decided it was time to share my story with a wider audience. I wrote a blog post detailing my experience, the discovery of Sarah's betrayal, and the path I took toward healing. I wanted to reach out to others who might be going through similar struggles and let them know that there is hope after heartbreak. To my surprise, the response was overwhelming. People reached out, sharing their own stories of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately, resilience. It felt empowering to connect with others who had faced similar challenges and to provide support in return. I realized that sharing my experience was not just about my journey. It was about creating a community where people felt heard and validated. As the blog gained traction, I found solace in the messages of encouragement from others. They inspired me to continue writing, and I began to open up about my relationship with Emily and the joys of building a new life. I documented our adventures, the lessons learned, and the importance of surrounding oneself with love and positivity. With Emily by my side, I learned to embrace vulnerability. We celebrated our victories, both big and small, and navigated the challenges together. Each moment spent with her felt like a reminder of the power of love and the importance of choosing partners who uplift and support one another. There were times when Sarah would reach out, still trying to find a way to reconcile. I was firm in my boundaries, always reminding myself of the reasons I had to let her go. I no longer felt anger but rather a sense of closure. I wished her well, genuinely hoping she would find healing in her own life, but I knew that my path lay ahead, not behind. As I stood in my kitchen one morning, savoring a cup of coffee and watching the sunrise through the window, I reflected on the journey I had taken. I had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and uncertainty, but I had emerged stronger and more resilient than I ever thought possible. I learned that love is not just about being together. It's about mutual respect, understanding, and support. I had discovered the importance of valuing myself and my happiness above all else. With Emily, I felt like I could build a future, one filled with laughter, adventure, and love. Together, we were crafting a story that was uniquely ours, and it was beautiful. As I looked forward, I was filled with hope. I knew that life would continue to throw challenges my way, but I felt ready to face them. I had learned to trust again, not just in others but in myself. I was capable of building a life that brought me joy, and that was a powerful realization. In the end, I found happiness not by forgetting the past but by learning from it. I had become the author of my own story, and I was excited to see where the next chapters would take me. I was ready to embrace love, life, and all the possibilities that lay ahead.